Okay, well, hi everyone, and thank you very much for watching or listening. Liam Hartree back with you today with another episode of the Simply Inspired podcast. And today I'm joined by not one, but two lovely guests this evening. And today's guests are internationally known spiritual mediums, mediumship couple, and I'm also going to say pioneers of mediumship in their home country as well. These two lovely people have really changed a lot of lives, spend their lives serving spirit and helping so many people. So we're going to have a wonderful chat. Lola-Kiss Keton and Jack Eckhart Langelund. Now, I hope I'm saying those names the right way. I'm sorry
Yes,
if I'm butchering that.
close enough.
Because that's the hardest part is actually saying the names. Everything else is easy. But guys, thank you so much. As I said before, we started recording. Thank you for making the time for this, and thank you for taking time out of your evening. Basically, I'm very, very grateful. So. Okay, well, we have a lot of good things to talk about. And as I mentioned before, I'm going to actually go back in time a little bit with you both and talk about where things started for you in terms of the world of spirit, the awareness of spirit, as I said before we began, because I really hope that this inspires people out there who may have this awareness but don't know what to do with it. So, Jack, I believe you volunteered kind of to go first with this question. So in terms of like your upbringing, you mentioned there's a Christian influences there, but how did the awareness of spirit start for you, please?
Uh, as I wrote to you, yeah, I kind of had my the awareness of my senses without really understanding what it was about, and actually thought it was like that for everyone. So I actually never talked about it as a child or anything. Uh, but around my daughter's birth, well, I've been around 20, 21 something. My mom, I had a chat with my mom, and she talked about she was looking around corners at me when I was a child and things, because I was always uh, uh, playing alone. I was like, "What are you talking about?" You know. I had my friends there, but I never talked about them. It was just a part of my daily life, and I think my mom was daycare where she had other kids at home and things like that. So it was like, well, I didn't play much with them, but I have other friends I played with, so no need to talk about it. Uh, and as I grew older, I became a trained blacksmith, a builder, got into military career as well. So it's very far away from spiritual stuff. Uh, but when at that time, mother-in-law passed away suddenly, I have started to be a little bit more aware, but was in a denial because it was not just these weird things lady with purple turbans and things like that, saying weird things. But at that time, my awareness changed a little. I started to change, and I become more aware of. Or being more aware of, probably the wrong way to say. I accepted more the presence of the spirit world, and went from being in this denial to actually accepting it. And then I met a psychic in Denmark that told me, "Oh, you should start heal and things." And I was like, "What are you talking about? So you have a course, something you want to sell me?" But no, she hadn't. I was just do it from the heart. And okay, so I started to have some guinea pigs and was quite surprised of the feedback. And after I've done that some years, I was introduced to mediumship that wasn't really very well known in Denmark at that time. Nearly 30 years ago now, and it was like I wasn't quite sure what it was, but I was very curious, and I've always had a quite an logic brain and quite an scientific brain. And at a quite young age, I was doing experiments with building small pyramids and things, put stuff in them, tomatoes, razor blades, and all kind of different things. So the interest had been there in energies, but I've always been looking at it from a scientific point of view. And actually, that was what fascinated with me with the evidential mediumship. And when I started that, we started come English tutors to Denmark at that time as well. And one of the tutors introduced me to trance, and I realized, well, this is familiar. I have done this for years without knowing it was trance. I just knew when I did the healing, it was just like, yeah, I'm not sure what's going on here. It's just happening. So yeah, it has been like uh, been going through an acceptance of the things that I actually basically always have experienced, and starting to talk more about it. And I guess for the first 10 years I was involved, I didn't really talk much about it, but it was purely for my own benefit, for my own understanding. Studying it, practicing it, but not with a purpose to, well, I'm going out to be a medium, I'm going on a platform or anything like that. It was more like an interested, was like, I want to study this. And I know, remember first time I was talking in a state of trance, it was quite overwhelming. And so from there, it took another 5 years before I spoke again, because I did a lot of trance courses and things, but to study the trance and understand the trance. And as I wrote to you, I've been in 2008 and 9. I was twice in Brazil to study the healing and trance work that was going on there in Abjanya. So it has been an interesting journey, and been taking a lot of courses at the college and different other places around UK as well, and a little bit here in Denmark with English tutors. So yeah, been a long journey, but all the way through it has been, what has been important to me is the understanding of the mechanics, and the understanding of what is actually happening. I believe that everybody can do mediumship, or giving a message, but if you don't understand what you're doing, what it's all about, then. So yeah. So I'm still very practical, and all my experience as a blacksmith, builder, military man, I use it all within my mediumship these days, within my teaching as well. So
That's,
yeah,
that's
but
really cool. Really, I mean, it's amazing because, as I said, everything that I ask here, guys, and Lola will come to you next. And I just want to say as well, guys, that it's wonderful because, as I said at the beginning, it's so relatable to so many people. So many people around the world are going through this, and the awareness of spirit, it is growing. But at the same time, like I was saying before we started, with technology like this, we can hopefully reach around the world and raise awareness. And I also love, Jack, with your side of it as well, that what you were saying there about the practical side, the logical brain, the being in the military, being like a tough individual, but you still
yeah,
have a sensitive side, wonderful because so many men, particularly, I think in this case, don't speak about any of their feelings, never mind sensitivities beyond. So it's a really, really good message. Thank you. And Lola, I'm going to ask you the same thing basically, because when we were setting up for this, you sent me a lovely description about your journey into the world of spirit. And this is similar to Jack, really, isn't it? The fact that you had to accept the awareness. I mean, in that aspect, you had the awareness. So could you please share with us the same sort of journey of how you came into this, because I think it's wonderful. We'll come to how you met later. I'm just saying for our audience, stay tuned for some romance as well, guys, because there's a little bit of that. But yes, before we get to that, Lola, please do tell us in your own words. Thank you.
Yeah, but my story is quite short, I think. I have always been aware of the other side of spirit world. I remember between my home and my school, there is a great big church with a big graveyard. So I have to walk through it every day. And my grandmother, who I was raised with by at her home, we always visit her husband and my biological mother, who was there. And one day she said to me, well, there's a new grave. My grandmother said to me, well, there's a new grave, and this is one from our family. And I said, yes, he died in a motor crash. I think I can't remember, 10 years. And she said, don't say that. I've always been aware of spirit world and always, but it was my world, because in Denmark, as Jack said, we didn't know much about mediumship, and definitely not me, because I was born and raised in a work home, with my grandparents, and in Denmark we have a history with Spiritism. And they had a lot of influence in the 1950s, 40s, 50s, and 60s, 40s, 50s, whatever. But they fought. They were fighting each other, and there was some big frauds. So everybody in a normal speaking, people thought you were totally either money or crazy. Yeah, so I just shut up, and but it was still my world, so I kept it. And yes, it just stayed with me. Always, I always aware that our loved ones were still around, and when I was visiting people, I knew I couldn't see them, or I just knew, it was just. So I tried a bit with tarot card, because that's so easy to find, and Ouija boards, and but it was boring. It wasn't the real thing, it was not the same. It was like everybody was just scared. So, and it was not that. Yes. So what did I do? Well, I moved to a big farmhouse where I started really opening it up. And there's a local community out here with farms. And I was so lucky to have a neighbor. He has been there on this farm with his family for, I think, 10 generations. So he knew the area. So what I saw, I could go to him and ask him, and he could confirm it. So that was very, very nice. That was really so what I saw was right. And then I met a teacher in Copenhagen, but it was psychic reading, and nothing to do with spirit. It was just psychic reading. And I remember there was a lady, my first psychic reading, she stood up and said, now I know I have to go home and get a divorce. And I thought, whoa, 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 whoa. Just because what I see and said. So I said, well, I'm not going that way. I'm not going that way. So I left it, and yeah, years after, 8 years ago now, I was on a fair, visiting a fair, and I saw Jack doing a dem, and I didn't know who he was or why he was standing there. And that was my first dem ever. And I thought, well, that's very nice. That's true. That's, alignment. It was so wonderful. Though you had to have a bit struggle but it was just, but I can see spirit, I can feel spirit. Yes. So yeah.
Amazing. It's wonderful to hear the journey. As I've already said, so relatable to so many people, so relevant, guys. I think it's fantastic. And as I've already said before, breaking down those barriers, other people experiencing this. I'll come back to the topic of mediumship growing in your country and the part you've played in that as well. But before we do, a little bit of romance here, isn't there? I mean, and the thing is, just to be clear, by the way, everything I talk about in these interviews is always for the benefit of helping people. It's
Yeah.
never to probe into anything like personal, by the way, just so you know that. But I
Don't
honestly,
worry.
but no, I'm just saying because you do have a wonderful connection, and not to go off on a tangent, but I also, as well as awareness of spirit and interview, I also used to be a wedding photographer years ago, and over time you see a lot of people together, and sometimes you can feel the love. A lot of times you can't, and you just look and think, I don't know if that will last long. And I mean, I'm sorry to say that, but being in the profession, you do know, and the bond that you guys share is wonderful, and I really mean that from my heart. So also, I think that actually that is inspiring for people as well because of how you met. It's meant to be. Now, with this one, I don't really mind which of you would like to go first. Okay, I mean, I'm quite easy. But basically, obviously, you met each other through mediumship, and there's a
Yeah.
wonderful story there. So, whoever would like to start the story, or if you want to share the story, I'm easygoing. But how did you meet? Let's hear some romance, please. Thank you.
Yeah, let me no, as I said, I saw Jack at that gym, and I thought, well, maybe I should learn a bit more. So it was, like I said, it was only my world. So Jack had a center nearby where I lived, so I came down and talked with him, and I had some not so nice experience, but Jack was just sitting there and telling me what it really was. So and I thought, well, this man can teach me something, and I feel calm around him, and well, I can feel he saw me, so that was wonderful. And I started in his circle. He had 2 circles and a lot of other things, but I was only interested in mediumship, so because that's really my world. Yeah, and he started teaching, and then I was the naughty one in the classroom, always asking, well, why are you saying that, and how can I do that, and is that true, can I do it in some other way, but and we really, he was just a wonderful man, wonderful teacher, and yeah, we didn't have this oh la la bond or nothing like that. It was just, very, very teacher and
student.
yeah. But then again, it was like, if he asked me to do something, or that sounds weird, I know that, but he made me want to elevate. He made me want to, with my mediumship, learn more, and he could cope with my silliness and my weird things. So, yeah. And one day we had actually the same fair. I don't know if Jack's daughter died, and 1 year after, it was 1 year after, yeah, we were standing and gave each other a hug as we used to do, but this hug just lasted a couple of seconds longer, and both of us was just, what? It was like lightning struck, and and I really had to think about that because it's your teacher. Jesus, I was 47, I think. So that was, so you're over student teacher thing, but Yeah, thinking, what? And it was very, very strange. It was very strange. And we walked like a cat around the hot porridge. I think that's and wondering, am I the only one feeling this, or yeah, it was. And every time we touched, like this, or when we met, it was like zzz. And actually we found out that the same day we had that wonderful, wonderful, wonderful connection. It was on his daughter's birthday. Oh, are you okay?
I mean, it's an amazing story, and even though you wrote that to me, I'm just taking it in for a minute because with like soulmates and this type of thing, people talk about that, and as you know, sorry to be blunt, but there's a lot of BS out there in.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
But so I really don't say it lightly, but obviously, as I've already said, when you're sitting together and the way the energies blend and everything really does have that soulmate quality. I mean, I don't know what other term to use, and I wouldn't ordinarily say that, but I can feel that. So, there we go. I mean, it's a wonderful thing, and I hope it also shows people that that's possible as well. I mean, and as you know, you feel it, and it's
Yeah, it was very strange. It was very, very strange.
Mm.
We couldn't, when I drove from the center, I had to call him, are you okay? Gee, it was like, I have never felt this connection before. Never, ever, ever, never. And that's not just something, sprinkled with, but this was very, very, very strong, very strong. And actually we tried to stop it because, I tried to stop it. Sorry. Because it was too much, it was so strong, but a single touch again, very funny, just brought it all back like we've never been apart. It was so.
It's amazing. I mean,
Yeah.
Jack, but obviously with your side of this, being a little bit of a naughty boy there with one of your students, isn't it? One of your students, but no, I mean it's still from your side of it. Obviously, Lola's described that, and you obviously feel the same thing. And was it the same for you? You knew at the same time with that hug on that special.
Yeah, with that particular hug, something happened, and I wasn't quite sure what actually was at the moment.
Mm.
But it was just like we have known at the time, we had known each other for some years
Without having
anything like that, and we talked a lot, but just as friends, and
Yeah.
the circumstances was just like, well, I'm a tutor, Lola is a student, and it was like, and I was like, I'm not gonna have a new girlfriend or anything from the involved with spiritualism or anything, because that was only trouble. And yeah, so it has just been trouble since.
Oh, well, for a good kind of trouble, absolutely. I mean,
Yes.
it's a beautiful story, guys. It really is a beautiful, beautiful story, I've got to say. And I really appreciate it because one of the other things I want to say just before we go any further with all of this is, the courage that you guys have shown. And you might think that's a bit strange, but actually, going back to what we said earlier, embracing mediumship, embracing spirit, and then going out with it publicly, it takes a lot of courage to go on a platform. It takes a lot of courage to share personal things like this, in this format. And, even it takes a lot of courage to embrace that feeling, even what you were just saying there, guys, because as you were saying, it can feel so strong. So I just want to say that because it's something that really stands out to me. It's a very brave journey you've both been on, but I really appreciate that love story aspect because it's heartwarming, genuinely, and I'd like to take that a step forward because obviously you bring out the best in each other in a lot of ways. I mean, anyone can tell that, but you obviously made the decision as well to actually work together and to, how shall I put it, to progress the spiritual movement, I guess, not only to serve spirit, but by that, I also mean in your country, raising awareness and creating your foundation, because I believe you're the founder of that, but you can clarify that for me.
Yeah.
Anyway, working together. And again, I don't mind who wants to go first, guys. It's totally fine. But how did that sort of progress in the spiritual aspect of saying, okay, you're not just going to join forces as a couple, but you're actually joining forces to progress the movement, if that makes sense,
Yeah. I say first of all, it hasn't been easy all the way, because we have met a lot of resistance, a lot of jealousy and things like that. But with that said, it has been, as we already talked about, I was the tutor, Lolas was the student. So the first platforms was like Lola was attending some of the services as a student. And with the lockdowns and things like that, we obviously all went online, and I started to put more focus both on teaching online and do services online, and and then by time we talked about, well, Lola could join some of them, and it just happened that we enjoyed to work together.
Yeah, because we have the same love for mediumship that's so strong. So when we work it's just like you work with the love. I don't know how I can explain that, but it's just so easy, if Jack, sometimes we struggle as mediums. And it's so easy for me or Jack to spot, okay, he's struggling today, so I have to elevate. Or it's just so easy, it's so easy to be joyful about it. And I think that's the most important thing, is that we can work with this joyful. I think that's the word.
Yeah.
And I think what helps a lot is a common understanding
Yes.
of how to work with the mediumship, a
Yeah.
common understanding of the mechanics within the mediumship.
Yeah.
So we have, can I say, we are
On the same way.
yes. Yeah.
Very much. Well, that shows. I mean, that shows. I don't mean visually, but it does. But as a feeling, it's very strong and it's absolutely wonderful. Now, I'd also like to talk. Well, there's a couple of things I'd like to touch on here, but obviously working on the platform, public speaking. You'll find this interesting, but I read somewhere that public speaking is the biggest fear, the number one fear that most people have in the world, even more than dying, So I always find it ironic when I'm doing a service and I'm up there public speaking about it's life after life, but technically some people would say death, and so I sort of combine two there. But anyway, but you guys, as I said earlier, it takes a lot of courage to public speak in front of people and their judgments about anything, but especially about a subject that some people don't understand, especially about within the spiritual community. There's some wonderful, wonderful people, but there's also a few backstabbing people as well, as I'm sure you know. So you have to face all of that. And I'd like to just talk about basically the question is when you started, and Jack, I know you were already teaching and Lola is a little bit later, but for both of you, when you started getting up on the platform and broadcasting this, I'd like to go a little bit deeper into that process, because the other thing I've encountered around a lot of churches is people who want to get up there. In other words, they're very good mediums, but they don't always have the confidence to get up in front of people. And I've actually seen a lot of really talented people who hold back in that level. So again, it's from the inspirational side, because you're putting it out there, and obviously it's not just you. I mean, it's spirit, it's guides, it's inspirers, whatever you want to say, and the spirits themselves. But to go a little bit deeper into that process of public speaking, if that makes sense. I don't know which way that will go, but I'd like to touch on that a little bit more. Whoever wants to go first. Thank you.
Well, believe it or not, but as a child, I was known as the little silent Jack. Um, uh, but my especially believe my military training and the career I did there. Became an officer. I was an education officer for some years, and I learned to at the time I learned to speak. I learned to teach, and I became used to stand up in front of 150 people doing talks and speak about military stuff, though. But that's I think that gave me a confidence to stand up in front of people. So when first time I went on the platform with the mediumship demonstration, it was no issue for me to stand up in front of people. The big difference was that I was used to have my script to talk from.
Mm.
So that was a change, but to have at the time, I believe I quite a good understanding of the mediumship. So that gave me a confidence in knowing, giving me a confidence in my own mediumship, because I know I understand the mechanics in it. So that was a big help to me. But again, I've learned to speak. I've learned to stand in front of people. I have several years of training with that, and a lot of years of practice with that before I went into the spiritual movement. So it's, to me, it has been taught, not in a spiritual way, but in a quite a strict environment, so to speak. So
Yeah, that makes sense.
So I've been lucky in that way, if I can say so. And I know Lola have
been struggling with that. But I think, I've been a dancer, dancing classical ballet, and I have been working on theaters, but always behind the scenes. And I remember the scary things when I started doing platform. But when you have spirit here, it's like your world just disappears, and you're just a messenger. So I don't think so much when I stand on the platforms, when I have a link. It's more horrible for me when I have to do the address, because, my brain will start to interfere with it too much. But when I'm doing mediumship, it's like you just bring the love. You're just the middleman. You don't think, it's like I don't exist. It's only just one way, pushing this way. So I have no problem with that. I really do enjoy that because it takes me away from everything. I don't think about it. But yes, as I say, when we talk about, because spiritualism is very new to me, so I met it through Jack. In Denmark, we don't know what spiritualism is.
Picking up from that point, you were saying about getting up in front of people, and I think that's a really, really valuable topic, because people put too much on their own shoulders, and they don't put enough, they don't often give it to spirit enough. I know in the beginning I did that as well. So I'm really glad you mentioned that, because I hope it encourages people with this awareness a little bit more. Now, when you were saying about, in your country, you both have mentioned this, the spiritualism movement is growing, but there was opposition in the beginning. I'd like to talk about how you both, how do I put it, how you both assess your impact, basically, in this way. In other words, I meant what I said at the beginning, that there is a pioneer quality in the sense that it's expanding, and I'm sure there's other people doing great work, but you're really helping this to expand and grow, and for people to accept their awareness. And basically, from your point of view, both of you, whoever wants to speak first, how do you kind of measure that, or how does it feel when you're helping people to come into their potential and their awareness, if you get where I'm going with this one, if that makes sense?
Okay. Well, first of all, it's usually a good feeling, but I believe in Denmark, as in many other countries outside of UK, where spiritualism isn't as common with a church on every corner. In Denmark, for decades, psychic have been the strong part. Psychic, since Spiritism fall apart many years ago, it has been the psychic and psychic schools and things like that. So people in Denmark has a really hard time to have the understanding of the difference between the psychic and the mediumship. And even heard from so-called spiritual schools, what to call it, that we are having a course with about mental mediumship, and there was people asking about, are we going to talk to dead people, and so, of course, because people demand that, we would put that in as well. I don't think, but you are announcing a course in mental mediumship, so that should be the main thing.
Right.
Just to give an idea of the misunderstandings.
Yeah, I mean, most of the time when they have these psychic schools, if you're a psychic medium, or they call it that, they have a weekend with mediumship. And you as a medium you can't learn that for a weekend. And that's how they, if I can say, I have your grandmother here, if not your grandmother, I have a lady here, what a lovely lady, can you take that? Yes. And she's telling me, you have such a wonderful, wonderful life. You are so sweet. You have a rough time. They go psychic. And that's the evidence. And I think, sorry, took over here.
It's good actually, because sorry to cut in there, but it's actually really good to mention, because that's one of the biggest confusions, or one of the biggest I mean, the amount of times you see psychic mediumship or psychic spiritualism or psychic, sometimes clairvoyance, or they specifically focus on the visual auditory, but they blur the psychic in with it. Honestly, what's so confusing for people. Nobody knows the difference in the beginning. I mean, personally, I started more with the healing side and then went into it from there. But, even so, in the beginning, there's a lot of lack of mentorship. And one of the things I really think is great about what you do is it is breaking down the steps, not in such a rigid way, but there's also the embracing with you guys of the fact that there's other aspects, there's the healing aspect, there's the communication, mental mediumship, the psychism. And that's the other thing, is I find people can be very blinkered about, it's one thing and the different forms. But I'm really glad you mentioned the whole psychic thing, because it's so confusing when people first come into the movement, but it is great work you're doing, guys. I mean, expanding this in your home country, and raising the awareness, I will say, raising the acceptance. And I have to touch on with that as well. I mean, I only talk about positive things, but this is relevant. You faced opposition, obviously, and resistance. You mentioned, I think you both mentioned at different times. I don't really want to dwell on that, but I also think it's very valuable for people to, like, how you've overcome that and how you stay positive, in the face of those challenges. Because going back to the bravery thing, which I said earlier, I think it's really important. That also takes courage, because I don't want to give people the idea that it's an easy journey, because they have to expect some hardships as well. So we have to be realistic about this.
Yes.
Again, whoever wants to say, I mean, I don't mind really, but how have you both stayed so positive in the face of adversity and opposition, basically? That's the question.
The first obstacle we had was because I elevated my mediumship very, very fast. And, you know, people around me in the circle was a bit, because Jack put me on the platform more and more and more. And it was like, oh, teacher's pet, or and people were quite, the other students could be quite nasty. But the love for mediumship, if you you know, you can be a medium for the money or for some people, and that's a shame because there is no money in it. But anyway, you really have to just be focused on what you are doing and what you want to do. And next step was when we found each other. That was horrible. People were very, very horrible. It's not just love and light. It's like when you are the teacher's pet, if I can say it that way. That's very, but you get in a position where other wants to be. Yeah. And when we found each other, the love for each other, it was even more horrible because I don't know, jealousy is very much. I was very shocked by it because I didn't think that people could be so hateful. And how you overcome it is to focus on what you are doing, what you want to do, because no matter whatever you do, you can't satisfy everybody. And you just have to focus on what's good for you, the mediumship or healing, whatever you're doing, and hope that what you're doing and how you're doing it is the right way, or if there is a right way, is, I don't know, you really just have to, and especially afterward, we are very good sometimes, most of the time, to talk about, you know, feelings, talk about, you know, you can have weird feelings, weird things happening. So Jack is very understanding on that. So that's very, very nice. So you can push away all the little things very quickly, and that's very, very important, especially in a spiritual relationship, because things can grow out of hand if you don't address them. But I think most of all, it's the love of what you're doing, the love for spirit world. Yeah.
Yeah.
I can only agree with Lola there.
Yeah,
It's,
I think so.
I think it was in Eastbourne, probably about 20 years ago now. I was told by another medium that, as I saw it, I didn't choose to work with spirit, but spirit would choose to work with me. If that's right or not, I'm not sure, but definitely it was a choice of mine to go that way. But that choice came with the love that I found with spirit. And as Lola says, when you're getting in these situations, I think you really have to look at why are you doing it?
Yeah.
Why are you doing it? I think I can't let go of it because it's in my heart. The mediumship is in my heart. The love of spirit is in my heart. I've never done this for money or for fame or anything, but because I have a love relation with spirit, kind of. So it's like when I believe when you're getting into these harcerations that lie, because being a spiritualist, being a medium, that's also living a life. And I think that's important to remember. We need to live this physical life with all the obstacles, all the difficulties and challenges that there is in life. And I think one of the hardest time for me to work through my mediumship was actually through my daughter's illness, because all the emotions, the fears, and everything, I really struggled. And it has been so easy, kind of, to say, I don't mind. I just pull away. I just focus 100% on my daughter and things. But I continued working with my mediumship even the days I was struggling. And I believe that helped me not only with my mediumship, but also within my life and the challenges that was around my daughter at the moment. And of course, after her passing, all the grief and things like that. But that my work with spirit have really been a great help through it all as well. So it's kind of, I've got so much from spirit, and then within that love relation with spirit, I do whatever I can to give a little bit back. And working with the mediumship, it's not, to me, it's not just about, oh, I'm Jack, I'm a great man. I have a big ego, no doubt it, but you need to have to be on a platform, things like that. So just accept it, don't deny it. But it's how we present our ego. I think, and that's the reason why Lola and myself work so well together, because we're always supporting each other. We don't try to highlight ourselves on behalf of somebody else. But I also believe that, as I said, to me, to be a medium is not about, oh, I'm the brilliant medium. No, I'm just the medium, just the one in the middle. It's all about the spirit world and you as a recipient.
Very much.
Yes, and I think also many people think that when I started in a circle, I thought, well, this is love and light and this is wonderful. But yes, you soon found out that we are only humans as well. And I think when you're struggling, not only in your mediumship, because when you are struggling in your day-to-day life, you are struggling with your mediumship, because you are working with your emotions sentence. And if that's the motor, that's the engine of your spirit, your mediumship. But I do think you have to, I remember when the waves were high, I think that's the word, when we meet these not so nice people, I think, I always, especially at the beginning, I said to Jack, so why are they doing that, you know, and so why is everybody doing that? And he just said, because I don't understand. And he said, luckily you don't understand it, because it's not in you. I'm no angel, by the way, but some of the things I couldn't. Why are they doing that? Why are they saying that? Because it's not in you. So that's a good thing, isn't it? You know, and that's how I overcome many of the obstacles and from other people. You know, yeah, because it has been a wonderful journey. I wouldn't ever. I look back and joy with it on it, but some of the things. And you just really as Jack said, you just have to focus on, it takes time to learn that, but focus on your skills, focus on the love of what you're doing.
Absolutely. I love that, guys. I mean, I'm really glad that we've mentioned that because, well, I mean, for anyone who doesn't know about these things, as you're saying there, the love that you feel from spirit when working, when around the churches. I mean, it's so replenishing, and you can't put it into words unless you experience it. You know what I mean. But anyone
Yes.
who doesn't, who's listening to this, it's a very powerful thing. And what you were saying, what you both said about being a vessel, being a selfless vessel, being the middleman. Funnily enough, I say that as well. And the energy is so healing. I have a theory. It's why I've met so many mediums where they're like sort of 80 or even 90 years old, but they look and act and feel years younger because you go in there and there's something really powerful. Like I can go in with a headache or having had really like bad day or whatever, and you come out feeling amazing. And
Yes.
it's not why I do it. It's a nice bonus. But at the same time, that feeling, if people
Yeah.
haven't experienced that, I'm glad to make them aware of the selfless vessel, because even what you were saying, Jack, you have to have the confidence and yes, the degree of ego, but it's used the right way, I
Yeah.
mean, I always say there's a healthy or unhealthy ego, in
Yeah.
that sense. A lot of people try and get rid of ego, and then you see them fighting with each other and showing how big their egos really are. So
Yeah,
that's another story. I
exactly.
also, but it's true because I also have that interest, that big interest in a lot of sort of Buddhist things as well as mediumship as well, because that was kind of part of the path I took to get there. So, and with that, obviously, there's a strong emphasis on the egolessness, which I don't think is really. I think it can be too extreme. But then you see people in churches fighting with each other, and you see a lot of. I always say in spiritualism, I've met some of the loveliest people I've ever met in the world. People who embody such wonderful principles and show those to the world. And I've also met some horrible people, really, who they don't really have many redeeming qualities. And I think, wow, they're in the church, and so it's kind of like the old adage of it's not, you can't judge a book by its cover. You could know a policeman or something who's been a terrible person, or you could know somebody who's been in prison or something, and they're a lovely person. It's kind of like that where in the churches, so people have to expect that. I also, the last couple of things we'll talk about now, but we'll wrap up fairly soon for people's attention spans, because TikTok and Instagram have made them a lot shorter. But that's another story. But, Jack, I just wanted to say to you specifically with this one, thank you for mentioning about your daughter, because it's one of those things where when you speak to people, and I'm looking at this from the point of view of the interview about any type of faith, doesn't matter what type of faith, one of the biggest reasons, other than fear, that people don't want to embrace the faith is people always say, well, how can there be like a higher power or whatever you want to call that if, these terrible things happen to good people? And um, I don't want to go into it too much because it's such a personal thing for you, but I also appreciate you mentioning it because the way that you said there about your mediumship helping you through that, by the way, I think will be very valuable to people who listen to this, because obviously a lot of people come into mediumship because they want peace and solace from a tragedy, from some, I mean, it's one of those things I often say, if life is all going perfectly well for a period of time, you're probably not going to go into a church. But obviously, if something's gone wrong in one way or another, it draws people in a lot of cases. So that's not really a question. I just wanted to say that because I could feel it from you a little bit, by the way, and it's very very brave to mention that. And anyway, there we are. So, I had that in mind that it might come up, and I wasn't going to bring it up because,
But I have no problems talking about it, Liam. So no problems, and I can just add a little bit to it. Yeah, it was with my daughter. It was 3.5 years. It was really hard, but I think with my understanding of mediumship and spiritualism and the world of things, and I've kind of always been like that. I wasn't afraid to lose my daughter, and that might sound odd, but I wasn't afraid to afraid to lose her, afraid of her to die. but I was afraid of. What scared me was the suffering she was going through. And when the day came when she had her last breath, it became kind of a silence and a relief, because her uh, her sufferings was over, and I knew I wouldn't lose her.
Yes.
She is still here,
Yeah. Yeah.
very much.
Very much.
Well, yes.
I've many communications from her through different mediums from around the world.
Oh, that's good.
And so she's still very present, and I knew that before. But looking back, I'm so grateful for those years, because even though it was a hard journey together with her, it was such a beautiful journey as well.
Yes. Well, very brave to mention that, Jack. I'm really glad that the contact is there. I mean, I was hoping
Yeah.
you mentioned that. And to be perfectly honest with you, by the way, I felt a bit of that as you were talking about this subject, you know. So there we are. It's a beautiful description of pretty much the hardest thing anyone can experience, I think. I think it's probably either losing a parent, losing a child, anything like that, but losing a child especially, you know, is so.
Yeah.
Thank you for mentioning that. Last couple of things, and then we'll wrap this up from there. Obviously, serving, or well, not even serving, but even learning in different countries, like you, Jack, you said you went to Brazil and things, and you guys have been around different places. I'd like to just talk about like some of your favorite memories. I know it's a big question, but just in terms of like, not to pick any favorites, but just in terms of if there's certain churches or certain experiences you've had serving Spirit that are the most special to you for one reason or another. Maybe there's too many to mention, but you know, again, whoever wants to answer this, guys, I don't mind. But it's just that I'd imagine that mediumship has taken you places you never would have gone otherwise. And I don't mean just physically, but you know, people you've met or experiences you've had, obviously. And I know it's quite a big question, but I was wondering if there's any sort of favorite stories you have or favorite places you've been, or so something the most special has come from mediumship other than the experience of the mediumship itself, which is probably the top of the tree with that one. But does that make sense? With words, I'm rambling that one a little bit, but does it make sense what I mean with, you know, some of your favorite memories? Let's talk about that, please, guys.
Okay. Yeah, I guess there's so many.
Sorry, it's a big one, you know.
When I'm finishing.
We'll be here till next.
So, I can tell you, working with my mediumship, studying healing, this spiritual package that has brought me a bit around the world. As I already mentioned, the UK, Brazil, even Dubai, and other places. I've had some great experiences in Egypt as well, and I met a man in Egypt that kind of, that was in my very early days, that knew everything about me, and was like, "Where do you know that from?" You know, obviously he was a really good psychic though, but I think remember in Brazil. Okay, in Brazil, I had my first journey to Brazil was one of the last days. I went down to what they call the sacred waterfall. There's a little path down there. I went there with a German acquaintance there, and said, "Okay, we just go down to the waterfall." And on the way down there, went to the cars and just put a prayer in, calling out to Spirit. Okay, guys, if you're out there, I need a confirmation down at the waterfall today. and went down the waterfall. And when we arrived down there's a waiting area. Men and women should go separate down because you're going to undress going on the waterfall and things like that. So when we came down there, there was a little group with some ladies and a few men. So the group leader there said, well, the men could go down first. There was me and 2 other men. And we went down to the waterfall, and I was like, okay, expecting something big to happen. But nothing really happened. So I was a bit disappointed. So we went back up to the waiting area, and all the ladies went down, and the 2 other men went back up that path. So I was left there alone there at this waiting area. And while I was standing there, I was just closing my eyes and doing a little prayer and giving my thanks for my time there and things like that. And with in mind, the disappointment, I didn't get that confirmation of the presence of the spirit world down the waterfall. I just put that prayer out, giving thanks. When I opened my eyes, a really big, dark blue dragonfly just came at the 2 circles and just stopped in front of me, and just hang there in the air for I don't know how long. Probably not very long, but long enough to have an impact on me. As I mentioned earlier, I've always been quite logical, quite evidential. So when it took off, I was like, okay, I had this feeling. So I said, okay, guys, if this was what you want to show me of your presence, you need to do it again. So when I opened my eyes again, the big blue dragonfly came back, did another 2 circles, and stopped in front of me. And I just burst out in tears because so many emotions, everything came with it. I can still be quite emotional talking about it, but that's, to me, was like really big confirmation. When I came back to Denmark, I looked up on the dragonfly. I knew it must be something like butterflies, transformation things. But I read up on dragonflies and came up that dragonflies is in many cultures a messenger from spirits. So I think that's probably been one of the biggest confirmations for me, not by bringing people bringing evidence for me, because I've had that loads of times. I've done that loads of times myself. But that moment, just me and that dragonfly down the forest in Brazil, that was just something something really special.
Wow, that is amazing. And Lola, I'd like you to answer the same question now in a moment, but just quickly before I do, Jack, I'm really grateful you mentioned that because the physical signs are so important and people overlook this. And the same thing, I've had experiences with dragonflies, with white feathers that appear out of nowhere. I had one time with this, with pennies, finding shiny, like brand new, polished pennies everywhere. And I also have with the number 77 or 777 is actually the most frequent one because those other things I've had, like a batch, where it happens and it stops and it happens. But the sevens thing, and it's every time I'm like changing path or some big decision or something has to happen. And I've spoken to other people about it. And even though I know about mediumship, I said, am I losing my marbles? Not that I have many left anyway, but of the ones I do have left, am I losing them? And they say, no. And obviously other mediums have these experiences with a lot of frequency. And as you were saying there, when you get evidence from people who've passed on, and I always say life after life because as you both said, spirituality is an extension of life. It's not something separate from life, But that thing about the physical symbols and dragonflies, and in Cyprus now, I had something very similar with the dragonfly it was a red one in this case, but it was very similar soon after we moved here. And it's bizarre, but it's wonderful. So, not to go off on a tangent, but the physical signs, a lot of people are curious about that and they don't know what it means. So I'm really glad we mentioned that. Lola, sorry, yes, I'd like to, if there's anything that you'd like to share about.
Yeah, very shortly, very short. I remember for many years ago, I have a big passion for old school magic. And I don't know, I can't remember how and when I came in contact with a very wise man in Iran. He was in Iran and I was in Denmark. And I really can't remember what it was all about, but he was doing, first of all, the healing. I've learned Reiki healing, and he was looking from Iran at my healing. And he said, so why don't you do spiritual healing? So I thought, what? What's that? But and then he said, well, I'm going to teach you some other things. And I remember it was something about some putting nails, nails in the fire and, something like that. And I thought, well, it was. But suddenly when I was sitting there in Denmark and he was in Iran, white clouds, like clouds, smoke was rising from from the ground, from floor. Thank you. And I thought, what was that? And you close your eyes and think, when I open it, it's gone. But it wasn't. So, and I was sitting with my hand, with the nails in my hands, not through them, but in my hands. And the smoke started to come up. And I thought, what was this? Again, closed my eyes, and looked, and it was still going on. And I saw him in my door, in the room. I thought that was so wonderful, because that's a proof that sometime, that was before Zoom, the spirit can connect without being in front, it was old school Zoom room. But that was a very, very confirmation that people have done things before us, like mediums, teaching mediums to evolve where we are. We don't have to sit in circles. I know that I'm not going on a tangent here as well, but people have to sit in circles 7 years and not saying anything, and then they start saying something, and before blah blah blah. People have done, but old school magic still can work. So that's one of my passions. But I think as long as spirit is, it's like no matter where you are, as long as the healing you do with your mediumship, and you can feel that you touch just by the connection. I think that's very, very big, and that's the most important thing. But yes, I do like old school magic as well.
Oh, that's great. I mean, that's really good though, Lola, because these different traditions and everything, these different aspects of spirituality are so important. I mean, as Jack, you mentioned earlier about trance and everything, and obviously we're talking here about the evidential side of it, but we've touched on psychism and we've touched on physical manifestations, synchronicity, whatever you call that. So, I hope that shows people as well that it's not too rigid. I mean, it's very much the flow as to where that takes you. And even though the evidential, like you were saying earlier, I mean, where I come from in Wales, it is one on every street corner, and it's good. But at the same time, I'm also glad that we've shown the diversity of the manifestations of spirit. I'll put it that way here. To some of them, I mean, there's a lot more. But yes, old school magic, or even if you were in Brazil, the shamanism and those sides of things, and there's so many different things that come into this. I'll have to go in a moment shortly, but before we do, the last thing I want to say very briefly, just to touch on, I don't know how far ahead you plan this, but what is next? I mean, if anyone's listening to this, and particularly in terms of Zoom services in particular, but also in terms of like your teaching, your courses, or anything else you're doing that people can get involved in or people can follow in some way on social media or whatever's easier. Can we just share very briefly how they can do that, how people can get involved, basically, and then we'll wrap things up, I think.
Yeah. Obviously, people can find us on Facebook. That's probably the easiest way to follow. But we have on the Danish Spiritualist Association, we have just started an English-spoken Facebook page, and we will around October start of back in September, start of October, we'll start off with a service with a medley of mediums. We will, and on that page we will have different events streaming, like debates, lyceums, things like that. We will have Zoom events, services, demonstrations, and we will have some teachings online going on there as well, not only with us, but also with teachers and speakers from around the world. So and the things will do things will many we will have some traditional things, and we will have things with different aspects put onto it as well. So it will be. I know we have one just going to set the date, but kind of, let's say, debate where we'll talk about the time before, during, and after the passing. Where well, I do have my experiences, but what we have what it's called not no we'll have what that are doing funeral ceremonies and things like that have some experiences with that part. So it will be both with like a spiritual side as well as a practical side and things like that. It's things like that we will do that. So but it's about finding on Facebook the Danish Spiritualist Association.
Yeah, and in Denmark we will still try to go travel around Denmark doing services at DEMS, talking about spiritualism. Next year we do have a for the youth gymnasium, the religion day. We are invited again to talk about spiritualism, and it's actually they're very curious about it. Yeah, and still doing divine services online, Danish, and trying to awake people, trying to let them know. So yeah, we're doing both international and Danish, really trying to get out there.
That's wonderful, absolutely wonderful. I mean, as I've said before, the what's the word for it? The meaning, the ethos behind what you're doing is absolutely wonderful in terms of the positive impact that it's having on people. I absolutely love that, and what you're sharing with so many people. So I hope that then, from listening to this, some more people will join the journey, and follow what you're doing. But as I've said already, all the way through, I mean, the inspirational side is wonderful. The awareness that this gives people is wonderful, wherever they are on the journey, whether they're very experienced people listening, beginners, anything in between, it doesn't matter. This will reach the right people at the right time, as Spirit always does. So the last thing, I mean, for me to say is just thank you both again, not only for making the time for it, but also for being open books, I guess you could say, sharing so much about your lives and things like that. I really do mean what I said earlier about the courage that it takes to do that, because this also is a little bit different than like a service, in the sense there's more about you in there. So you've done a great job, guys, because you've just been so speaking from the heart and everything. So
Thank you.
thank you very much for watching. Please subscribe to the Simply Inspired YouTube channel, and there'll be more videos coming soon.